Train Sim World has finally come home with the Great Western Express DLC. Welcome to Sim UK. If you don't already know, then I can tell you that Train Sim World has released its first DLC, Great Western Express. It came out on the 14th of September after being delayed from release in August, and it's currently on sale for $14.99 until the 28th of September, at which point the price will go back up to $24.99. If you don't already own Train Sim World CSX Heavy Haul, then there is a bundle available which will keep the price a little bit lower than that. Once again, this is running on Unreal Engine 4, and it's utilising Dovetail Games Simulgraph and real-world data technology. The DLC comes with 3 locomotives: the world's fastest diesel locomotive, British Rail's Class 43 HST, with an absolute top recorded speed of 148 miles per hour, but an average cruising speed of 125 miles per hour. It comes in the Great Western green livery and pulls 7 Mark III coaches alongside it. The Class 43 can also run on electric, but a bit more on that later on. We also have the Class 166 passenger multi-stop DMU. This was last built in 1993 due to it failing the emissions tests that are now applicable to all locomotives, but you'll find that this locomotive is still in service, mostly used by Great Western out of Paddington. This train has a top speed of 90 miles per hour, so it's no slouch, and it means that it's suitable for mainline use. And finally, we have the freight locomotive, the Class 66 DBS, aka the Shed, and this is what will allow you to transport your cargo to and fro. I must say that all 3 locomotives have absolutely excellent external modelling. There's been great attention to detail on the external components. This includes the light effects, dirt on the front of the engine, the bogies, the wheels, the couplings and the cabling, the gangway corridor bellows, everything to the finest detail. Very, very impressive. Internally, it is pretty good as well. The cabs are good. Mostly all the buttons and switches are clickable or twistable. And as a passenger, you have almost complete freedom between the carriages. There has been some controversy over the chosen liveries, but I won't go into that too much because I don't have enough information to go on. Audio, however, is pretty poor all round. This is one area where I would hope a lot of work will be done. The HST has a shadow glitch which should be fixed soon enough, as Dovetail Games are fully aware of it. And internally, unfortunately, the toilets inside are not modelled, so the doors don't open and there's nothing to see there. There are no moving passengers inside of the train itself, inside of the carriages, except when they're getting off of the train. And the headlights are not very impressive at all. In fact, I found that the cab light is more effective than the headlights are. Overall, I am extremely impressed with the overall look and feel. This is one fantastic experience. The audio for me is the major letdown, and it's a little bit tainted by the lack of a genuine cold and dark start, plus the lack of a decent tutorial is an issue. It is possible to get stuck in the doors. The doors don't detect that you're there and they will close on you and splice you into the carriage. And also, it is possible to jump on a moving train, although whilst you're moving, it's not possible to open the doors, so you need to try and find a way in if you can. That being said, you can open the carriage doors on the opposite side if you're a passenger. I haven't tried this as a driver, with the doors definitely locked, but there are some limitations to the AI drivers that I've discovered and will discuss in a bit. So the game comes with a fully functional 24-hour schedule. This means that the lines are constantly running with a maximum of, I believe, 250 trains in operation throughout the day. Each of these trains have passengers on board. You can see them get on and get off if they happen to pull up at a station that you're currently at. You can travel along in the cab or as a passenger, or you can at some point decide to take over the train. You can literally jump on and off these services at your leisure. And if you so choose, you can spawn specifically to take a service if you want to. AI drivers actually do spawn if you're not taking the service and will therefore be driving the train. That being said, the AI drivers are limited. They won't close the doors if you leave them open, and they don't move the controls within the cab. This means not only an animated movement of controls, but the controls themselves do not move when the train brakes or accelerates or anything. Everything is completely static, which is a bit of a shame if you ask me. Having the 24-hour schedule certainly adds to the number of scenarios that you can try, and it makes the line feel quite alive. Speaking of the line, we are running on the Great Western Railway. It was built between 1833 and 1838, and it links London with the South West, West England, Midlands and most of Wales. It's been revered by British holidaymakers as the Holiday Line, and was engineered by Isambard Kingdom Brunel. I have to say, it's really nicely modelled all along the line. There is some additional distance modelling which helps to keep it feel alive. It's a little bit sparse, but just seeing a car pass behind the houses along the road just does that little bit to make it feel more authentic. The lighting and the seasonal effects make it look so realistic. It's very, very good, and when you're passing it at 125 miles an hour, it looks absolutely spot on. I do love the 24-hour running schedule, which allows you to just hop on and off services as you choose. It's a nice feature, and hopefully we'll see it in every release from here on in. Unfortunately, the track was built on a survey which was taken over a year ago, which means that the OHLE beyond Hayes and Harlington are not there because they were under construction at the time of the survey. These are now completed, so this line is actually a little dated. That doesn't bother me so much, but I know a lot of you out there will find that really grates on your nerves. There's a little over 35 miles of track between Paddington and Reading, and this takes about 30 minutes in the HST, which for me is a little bit too short. There are no branch lines either, so if you're hoping to have Heathrow on this list, then you're going to be sorely disappointed. Hopefully, and this is a major thing for Train Sim World, future DLC can be added directly onto this line. I hope this is going to happen. This is not confirmation that it will happen. I would like to see future DLCs extending the main line and the branch line so that we can run a continuous journey from A to B to C. If they are going to release in smaller segments, then I think the price needs to drop. I'm quite happy buying individual branch lines and very small sections of track for a smaller fee, thereby building up an entire line at my leisure. There are 24 stations in total running between Paddington and Reading West, and there are numerous depots and sidings also that can be incorporated. The stations are okay, and actually they look a lot like their real life counterparts, especially Paddington, which is absolutely fantastic. There's lots of little features and items that you would expect to see on a traditional British station, and the passengers mill about with a bit of a purpose rather than just an aimless mill. They even sit down on the benches at times. There are safety warnings on the stations, and these are read out by the official GWR announcer, so you can't get much more authentic than that. And also, this is a bit of a personal thing, but the metal girders are so authentic and I think symbolic with rail's history and such an important detail. I'm glad that they've included it here. Those featured items that I mentioned, unfortunately, are not clickable. You cannot interact with them at all, and they also lack a bit of real detail. For example, the ticket machines don't have the screens turned on. There's nothing there. There's no information. It's really quite disappointing that they couldn't go that little extra bit and just make that look more authentic, more realistic. Although the dot matrix boards are there, they are not active, and there's no station announcements yet. I understand that this is coming in the future, and it sounds like quite a lot is planned for this area. So for now, at least, it's a bit stagnant, and hopping on and off services is a bit hit and miss because you've no idea what's coming next. Paddington does look fantastic, but it also hits FPS quite hard. This is a next-gen game. You do need a next-gen machine to run it. I think it might be the passengers spawning at Paddington which causes this FPS hit. It might be a better idea, especially if you're spawning at Paddington, to load the passengers first and then Paddington Station itself. And another personal peeve, the lifts do not work. You'll find at Reading there are a couple of lifts on the bridge. I think for a small amount of coding, this could probably be implemented and just give that little bit of extra polish. So other than Paddington, the stations are a little bit unimpressive. They're nicely modelled, they look realistic, and a lot of them do reflect their real-life counterparts. It's much nicer to pass through them than to stop and wait at them. It would be nice if we could have modding in the future, like Flight Simulation, where they have detailed representations of airports available. It would be really nice if we could have that same kind of additional DLC to plug in to Train Sim World and really make these stations stand out and be all that they can be. The key aspect for this DLC has to be the passengers, and no doubt for Dovetail Games this was one of the biggest hurdles. And they had to do some out-of-the-box thinking, but overall I think they've done an okay job. The passengers themselves appear to have a good balance of passenger presence. Possibly there are more at busy times and at busier stations, although this could just be a coincidence and just something that I feel I saw rather than knowing actually happens. All the models look okay, they have varied clothing. This makes it feel like there are more models than there actually are, which makes it feel like there are more people. They all have fairly good movement when they're walking, and when they're stationary they have some nice animations as well. And it always seems like they have somewhere to go. They don't just sort of mill about and walk into the wall most of the time. They seem to have a purpose and head towards the exit or come and wait on the station for their train. You will find passengers both on your train and AI trains, which is a nice feature and something that I wasn't actually expecting to see. I have seen evidence of these passengers falling onto the tracks. When this happened to me, the screen went completely black. Now, I'm not sure if the two things are associated or not, but I've only seen that happen once, and I had a black screen as a result. I have also seen that there are passengers ending up on the roof, and they do tend to get stuck and then kind of bundled together. Now, I don't know how long that will start before passengers start vanishing, but clearly passengers are a complicated, difficult thing to implement, and just a little bit more work is probably required to get the passengers right where they need to be. Passengers don't actively fill or empty a train. Although technically they do get on and off the train, they never actually get off the train. If there's a passenger sat on a seat on a train, it seems that they don't ever get off the train. What happens is, as the train pulls up at a station, passengers spawn in the doorway and they get off and then disappear off into the station until they find their exit point. A similar kind of thing happens when passengers are getting on. They spawn, walk into the station, wait for their train, and as they step onto the train, they themselves vanish. It's unclear whether or not this actually fills the train and empties the train. It's kind of a difficult thing to analyse, and maybe over a period of time I can figure out whether that's happening or not. My knee-jerk instinct for this is that it is not happening, and just that random passengers are spawned into the carriages or something like that. I don't know for sure. Maybe Dovetail Games can give us some clarification at some point in the future. I think Dovetail Games should be commended for their out-of-the-box thinking with passengers. It's something that I knew was going to be a massive, massive drain on FPS. I knew it was going to be a complicated process, and I didn't really know how well they were going to do. And I think with their out-of-the-box thinking, they have done an excellent job at simulating busy stations and active real-life train journeys. I think they've done a superb job, and they should be commended for that. There is a good balance of passenger presence in the train and at the station. It feels about right. Obviously Paddington gets extremely busy, and I think it's unlikely that you will ever see that many passengers capably spawned into the game, not unless you had an incredibly high-end machine. But who knows, in the future passenger technology could evolve so much that this becomes possible. But for now I think they're doing a fantastic job, and it feels just about right, just busy enough to feel like a real station. I like that the passengers have somewhere to go and they're not just aimlessly milling about, and their little individual animations are pretty nice and make them look pretty realistic too. It's a shame that the passengers do not really get on and off the train, but I like the way that they've implemented it, and it kind of serves the purpose. As I said before, this is a next-gen simulator. You will need a next-gen system to run it perfectly. This has much better performance than CSX Heavy Haul, even with the passengers, which are an obvious FPS hit. So it's been much better optimized. Some people still complain and have issues with the train system, but seriously, you need a decent system to run this. The recommendations are that you have a GTX 970 or Radeon RX 480 or above. So really and genuinely, you do need to have a solid system if you want to run this on high graphics. I have noticed some small stutters, but mostly it's been very good, much better than Train Sim 1 ever was. And it's only really when passengers are spawning at stations that this FPS issue really sort of stands out, where the stutters literally stop for a second and then continue. But overall, the performance is much improved, and I think if I played around with my graphic settings a bit more, I could most likely get a smoother, uninterrupted FPS run. I'm averaging about 30 FPS at the moment, but it does bounce up round in the 40s and even close to 50 at some point. So I think with a little bit of tweaking, I might even be able to get 60 FPS out of this. And I'm running a GTX 970, so there's kind of some proof of it, and an old i7 processor. There are some new features to note that I haven't already mentioned. The performance improvements on FPS and stability is clear for all to see, I hope. There's also a built-in camera, which interestingly will pause the game, upscale it to 4K, and then take the picture and return you back to your 1080p run. This is quite interesting and certainly gives you some wonderful in-game pictures. There's also the option to have an external alert. So this is when you're outside taking a photograph that you don't miss an alert, although obviously this isn't going to help you with the red lights issue. So if there's a red light coming and you're outside the train, you're still going to run through it, and that'll be the end of your game. Travelling as a passenger and being able to sit in almost any seat within the carriage and allowing you to get on and off as you please is a really nice touch. And for me, personally, I find this to be one of the most enjoyable things, just hopping on and off trains and just sitting where I like and watching the world go by. It's quite fun, it's quite entertaining, although obviously at some point you're going to want to jump up into the train seat and take over your own train, which I have to say has been modelled very nicely, and all but for the audio issue and lack of cold and dark starts plus proper tutorials, it's really very good. I like the in-game AI and their passengers and their animations, all very impressive and all do just enough to make it feel real and alive. I like the 24-hour scheduled trains, the fact that you can get on and off as you please and you can take over any of these. The ability to rebind keys on your keyboard is a fantastic feature. I'm very happy that they finally implemented that. I have been asking for that for such a long time. It's nice to see it finally in, and I know that came in CSX Heavy Haul in one of the updates there, but it is so nice to see. It makes such a huge difference to everything. The seasonal lighting and the weather effects are absolutely superb, with the exception for the rain, where I feel that Dovetail Games maybe should share the precipitation algorithm that they use for Flight Sim World with Train Sim World. Just my personal. They've also added a compass, which I found to be very helpful, because as you come out onto a station in a simulated environment, how are you supposed to know which direction is which? I'm sure in the future, when the dot matrix boards are working and the station announcements are active, this will be less important, but certainly for now, it's quite a useful little tool. It also has the time on it, and having the clock available is another key feature, especially if you're swapping between services and you've planned it all out. You'll know what you're doing. The biggest issues for me are the lack of scenarios. There's only 7 in total, and although there are a lot of scheduled runs to try your hand at, there is no way to record which scheduled routes you have completed, at least that I know of. So it's easy to lose track and sort of lose your way within that large number of routes available to you. Again, there's the lack of the cold and dark start, something that I think we were all hoping and expecting to see, and the tutorials are a little bit lackluster. They're done very nicely, the ones that exist, but I think they could go into more detail, and again, if we had cold and dark starts, that would be really nice to see as well. I personally could not see station names on the 2D map. Now that might be something that I'm missing, I don't know. But it would be nice to see station names on the map just so you can track and fully understand where you're going. As I've mentioned before, the dot matrix boards and station announcements are not currently active, neither are the lifts, and there are some more details required on the feature items like the ticket machines. Just a little graphic in there to make it look like it's on would be a nice touch. Although I am happy that you can rebind keys on your keyboard, I still find it a bit of a pain that you are not able to use any controller you want. I have a SideTech side panel and I feel that that would be really useful to use alongside anything else for my train sim experience. Now obviously there is the Rail Driver controller which does work with Train Sim World, but they are very expensive and incredibly difficult to get hold of second hand. But people generally have a myriad of different controller types that they could use, and quite frankly I don't see any good reason why Dovetail Games cannot allow us to utilise any controller that we see fit. In-game audio is a major concern for me. I think a lot of work needs to be done here. It totally ruins the immersion. A long time ago I used to think that audio in a game was probably the least important of all the features, but I have been proven wrong. I have been educated. Having really good surround sound audio in a game is the most immersive of all the features, and at the moment the audio here is a real disappointment. If you're quiet and you listen in, you can hear the nice clickety-clack sounds, but honestly, there is a lot missing here. One example would be, during my tests, I did slam on the emergency brake, and there was very little visual indication that I had done that, and absolutely no audio indication that I had done that whatsoever. A huge disappointment, but hopefully something that Dovetail Games can work on and improve immeasurably. The AI drivers don't move the controls or close doors. They're not very smart. They're not even smart enough to turn on the windscreen wipers if it's raining. Fortunately, if you're travelling along as a passenger and you're in the front cab, you yourself can turn on the windscreen wipers, but honestly, this shouldn't have to happen. Incidentally, there are a few bugs here, there and everywhere within the game. We kind of expect this at early release. Nothing that's really groundbreaking, but you've got the HST shadow blur, which is a bit annoying to see, but I'm sure they're going to get that fixed pretty quick. There's also another one where a red crosshair bug, if you're running as a passenger and you flick out to the external camera and come back in. That's nothing really major, but there are a few of these little bugs here, there and everywhere that just they mildly irritate, but there's nothing serious that you need to worry about. So, to sum up, in the future I'd love to see more scenarios and missions, or better still, map editors and scenario tools. That would be fantastic. If we had the option to include third-party stations that had been built to look exactly like the real stations, I think that would be fantastic. Similar to what flight sims do with their airports. I would love to see something like that implemented into Train Sim World. Precipitation on the windscreens, to be honest with you, Flight Sim World have absolutely nailed that, and I think Dovetail Games could quite easily pass that information over, and then Train Sim World could enjoy the same level of precipitation that we do in Flight Sim World. That being said, the guy who built the precipitation in Flight Sim World used to work on Train Sim World, so they already have a very good relationship there. That might be something that you could expect to see in the coming weeks and months. At least I hope it's something we'll see. So hopefully this has given you enough information to know all about the Train Sim DLC, and if I've forgotten anything, please let me know in the comment section. Give me hints, tips, help me make better content. And if you enjoyed it, then please hit that like button, give me the thumbs up. If you want to see more, subscribe, and don't forget to tickle that bell. Thanks very much, take care, till next time, goodbye.